Hello, this is Paranormal Girl, and today I'm going to talk about the most famous UFO crash of all time, the one that started it all off, the Roswell crash, UFO down. On a long weekend holiday over the 4th of July 1947, a mysterious airborne object of some sort came apart and spread debris all over a wide area of a desert ranchland north of the little town of Roswell, New Mexico, causing a major controversy that still rages to this day, as it is said and was asked, where did it come from? On Tuesday, July the 8th, 1947, the local paper, the Roswell Daily Record, in blazing headlines across the front page read, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. The next day, Wednesday, July the 9th, 1947, in the same local daily newspaper, the headlines read, GN, Rami empties Roswell saucer. Rami says excitement is not justified. General Rami says disc was a weather balloon. And of course, if we all believe it was a weather balloon, nah. What on earth were they doing with a weather balloon on that one particular day? The first headline may have startled the controversy, but the second one didn't end it. Ufologists continued to claim that even before the downed object became public, there was nothing but a concerted effort to cover up whatever happened out on the plains that stormy night. Within hours of the estimated crash down, there were reports of mysterious flights carrying huge boxes to unknown destinations. Military truck convoys loaded with even larger unmarked crates headed to who knows where. Some say there is debris, I-beams with hieroglyphic writing on them, UFO writing, alien symbols, some claim. There is also mysterious metal foil that has since come to be called memory foil in UFO lore, because when folded, it springs right back to its original shape without any creases or signs of a fold. There are also reports of a second crash site in the mountains west of Roswell that had an almost complete craft that slammed into the rocks and boulders. Years later, it came out that a noted archaeologist, Professor William Curry Holden of Texas Tech, was camping with students in the Captain Mountains the night of the crash and saw something coming down. The next morning, they went looking for it, thinking it may have been a wrecked plane. They came across a metal object all banged up, resting against the rocks. Before they could get a closer look or do any real investigating, an armed military contingent moved in and escorted them out of the area. A second archaeologist, William Lawrence Campbell, also claimed to have come across the downed craft. Campbell, known as Cactus Jack, would eventually end up a grisly old prospector type, was a bit more of a seat-of-the-pants kind of guy, with a one-time reputation as a rock hound and a pothunter, not quite sure what that is, than the fully academic Holden. Campbell had first-hand experience in the infamous World War II UFOs the aviators called Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters harassed pilots and flew crews on both sides of the action throughout the war, remaining unidentified and basically just disappearing into aviation history after the end of hostilities. Campbell, apparently being comfortable because of his knowledge of Foo Fighters, came forward early on with his account. Holden maintained a silence on the subject, cleared up until the time he was nearly on his deathbed. Only when he was sought out did he reveal even the meekest of information. Ufologist Thomas J. Carey spent a great deal of time interviewing and searching down the facts, but as with the most of the Roswell reports, contradiction surfaced between the two archaeologists and their sightings. Campbell, who was never located by Carey, reportedly described the object as round. Holden's was delta or wedge-shaped. Even the locations of the crash scene varied between the two. Supporters and detractors stepped forward, championing their own positions and discredited the opposition. So, if it was a weather balloon, why so much military response? Why, if it was just a simple mere weather balloon, did they suddenly come in with all their trucks to get the evidence? Makes you think, doesn't it? Really? A weather balloon? I don't think they would go that far as to try and cover up a weather balloon. Not with all that military convoy. Anyway, so we look at the next part of this report. Even though the government continued to deny the flying saucer story after the initial report, sticking with the downed weather balloon scenario, they still 2 months later brought in famed meteorite hunter Dr. Lincoln LaPaz. LaPaz's job was to find out if he could determine the Roswell's object's trajectory, a move considered by most observers to be highly unusual if the object was thought to be actually no more than a mere inflated, slow-moving, wind-blown weather device. And there's your answer. During his investigation, LaPaz discovered a previously unknown touchdown site not far from the debris field where the sand was fused into glass-like substance, apparently by something extremely hot that either landed there or flew over briefly very close to the surface. The interesting thing about the newly discovered site was that it was in direct line with the debris field and the Captain Mountain crash site, as though whatever caused it flew straight over the area, the debris field, and right into the boulders on the lower north slope of the mountains. And here is a map of the debris field site. According to perhaps the most thorough, comprehensive and current source regarding Roswell on the internet, is filled with information and insights from a person that was actually there. The surface of the touchdown area 5 miles north of between the debris field and the mountains gave off a slight pale blue hue, as though a thin patina of some sort had been sprayed all along the swathe of the fused glass site. The debris field and the Captain Mountain site show no indications of the hue, and LaPaz conjectures that because of the other two sites have been reworked to show no evidence, years later co-investigator with LaPaz, a mysterious biosearcher that had several plant species named after him, and who many claimed had in his possession a piece of the magically unfolding memory foil from the downed objects, suggest it crashed because of the great 1947 sunspots called coronal mass ejections emitted from the solar body that year, and most assuredly so that the same month the object went down. The conjectures just added more controversy. Interestingly enough, LaPaz himself, only a few days after Roswell, had seen a flying object in New Mexico as large or larger than the gigantic UFO that went over the Battle of Los Angeles that was seen by thousands over that city in February 1942. So let's have a look at the next person that saw the debris, and that's Jesse Marcel Jr. himself, and here he is there in that picture. Jesse Marcel was nearly 11 in early July 1947 when a rancher called Mac Brazel found some odd-looking metallic debris littering a sheep pasture in a remote area of New Mexico. On July the 6th, he took some of the debris to Roswell, the nearest big town, and presented it to the local sheriff, who turned it over to officials at the Roswell Army Air Force Base. The next day, Brazel led 2 officers, including Marcel's father, Major Jesse Marcel, an intelligence officer with the 509th Bomb Group, to the field where the debris was scattered. They spent all day picking up pieces and then returned to Roswell. On the way back to the base, Major Marcel stopped at his house to show the debris to his wife and his young son, Jesse Jr., and recalled his father waking him late at night so that he could see the pieces of a flying saucer, metal foil chunks of what looked like Balkalite plastic, and a lightweight beam inscribed with mysterious purplish hieroglyphs. And I'll show you a picture of that very shortly. Marcel gave the debris to the Roswell base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, who summoned the base public relations officer and told him to issue a press release. Basically say that we have in our possession a flying saucer, he said. The next day's headline in the local newspaper read, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. It brought phone calls from all over the world, and the authorities quickly changed their story. On July the 9th, the press reported that Brigadier General Roger Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force Base in Fort Worth in Texas, had explained that the flying saucer was nothing more mysterious than a weather balloon. The incident was more or less forgotten until 1978, when a UFO researcher called Stanton Friedman went to interview Jesse Marcel Sr., who insisted that he really had found a flying saucer. And why should he lie? This man was an actual, Air Force officer. They, again, are trained in spotting certain things, and there is no way he would have said it was a weather balloon and then lied about it. Why would he want to cover that up? It makes you think. So I'll read this again. The incident was more or less forgotten until 1978, when a UFO researcher called Stanton Friedman went to interview Jesse Marcel Sr., who insisted that he really had found a flying saucer, but that his superiors had covered it up and ordered everyone who come into contact with the UFO never to talk about it. Subsequently, Major Marcel died in 1986, and the eyewitnesses came forward to corroborate his story, with some even claiming that an alien body had been found in the wreckage. Small humanoid figures with large heads and huge slanted almond-shaped eyes. A local funeral director claimed to have received 2 mysterious phone calls on July 7th, 1947, from someone claiming to be a mortuary officer. He said he needed to know how many 2 foot 6 inches hermetically sealed baby caskets were in stock. Then he called back to ask about what embalming fluids would do for the bodies. A nurse at a local hospital claimed to have seen autopsies performed on the 4-foot-tall aliens. The stories eventually led to the publication of a book, The Roswell Incident, 1980, which, with the release of the film E.T. in 1982, helped ignite an explosion of interest in all things extraterrestrial. Over the next 30 years, the Roswell Incident would grow into a huge commercial phenomenon, making millions for film companies and writers, and not least the town of Roswell, which hosts 2 museums and an annual UFO festival. The association proved lucrative too for Marcel Jr., who appeared on numerous television and radio shows, and he went on to lecture tours, and in 2007 published The Roswell Legacy, in which he continued to insist that the wreckage had an extraterrestrial origin. He even provided artist impressions of the mysterious hieroglyphs. Let's have a look at these hieroglyphs. Right, this is a picture of his father with the fold-in foil, but in actual fact, this isn't what his father brought back. Not in the slightest. This is what he was told to show. This isn't the original. And this is more than likely this weather balloon that they said that he had to show to cover up the story. This is a picture of the hieroglyph. And somebody have actually mentioned that this looks very much like Greek hieroglyphs. And they've translated it into utopia. If you have a look at these here, and then look at the Greek hieroglyphs of utopia, it's practically identical. Utopia. Maybe that was the name of the ship, Utopia. Who knows? In the 1990s, however, the American military came up with the admission that was, in its way, even more fascinating than the UFO story. The Pentagon admitted that General Ramey had not been telling the whole truth when he had said that the pieces come from an ordinary weather balloon. Surprise, surprise. In fact, they came from a 700-foot string of weather balloons. It gets worse. Radar reflectors and acoustic sensors that had been launched on June the 4th, 1947. And if you buy that story, well, I don't. As part of a top-secret experiment to eavesdrop on Soviet nuclear weapons tests called Project Mogul. As for the hieroglyphs, Marcel Jr. remembered these bore a striking resemblance to the purple symbols on the tape that was used to reinforce the Project Mogul radar reflectors. The reflectors had been made by a toy company which, because of wartime materials shortages, used novelty tape that they'd had in stock. As for Major Marcel's testimony, Captain Sheridan Cavett, a fellow intelligence officer who had accompanied him on his foray into the New Mexican desert, used his release from his oath of secrecy to pour cold water on the UFO theory. "We had to know Marcel," he said. "He was a wild Cajun from Louisiana. He made lots of claims he couldn't back up. He was one of a kind." But Marcel Jr. was having none of it, telling the interviewer Larry King that the debris could not have been from any sort of weather balloon, even a mogul balloon, because the material was totally different. It was, he maintained, something that came from another civilization. Jesse Marcel Jr. was born on August 30th, 1936 in Houston, Texas, and served as a medical officer in the U.S. Navy from 1962, becoming a specialist in ear, nose and throat surgery. After retiring from the Navy in 1971, he opened a medical practice in Helena, Montana. In 1975, he became a medical officer in the Montana National Guard and earned his flight surgeon wings. Flight surgeons at the time were allowed to fly solo in helicopters at Fort Rucker in Alabama. He was appointed state surgeon of the Montana and retired from the military in 1996. During Operation Iraqi Freedom, he was called up again for active service, and in September 2004, he spent 13 months as a flight surgeon with the 189th Helicopter Battalion in Iraq, reaching the rank of colonel. He survived by his wife Linda and his 8 children. Jesse Marcel Jr., born August 30th, 1936, sadly passed away on August 23rd, 2013. And he himself said at the time that the debris he saw was not of this world. It was from another civilization. Why would he lie? He had no reason to lie. He actually had first-hand account and witnessed the debris that his father famously brought back to show him and his mother. So again, the hieroglyphs that I showed here were translated as utopia. To be perfectly honest, if this was just sticky tape from a children's toy factory, this looks more very metal to me. There is no way that this is tape. This is pure metal of some kind. This is not children's tape. This is not from a children's toy factory. This is the real deal. And if you look carefully, it does kind of look like the wording of utopia. Makes for a very interesting read. And there are many documentations on what Jesse Marcel Jr. did see. And they did make a film of this. And there are a few very famous films out there. But yes, did it actually happen? I think it did. Again, if you have seen UFO or you have been to Area 51, leave a comment below in the section. I'll be interested to know what your story is. And another thought to add to this story as well. In the second site crash, the debris field, they found glass, or sand rather, that had been heated to glass. Now, a weather balloon wouldn't cause that, would it? Something of very high, ferocious heat would have to melt sand into glass. So, my question is, was it a UFO? Or was it a weather balloon? If it was a weather balloon, there is no way on earth that it would make sand turn to glass. Only something like a UFO with the technology could do that. I'll leave that thought with you. Thank you.